Let's talk about how I got into doing criminal justice work. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I spent several years working in the criminal justice slash mental health field with criminal offenders, perpetrators of crime, as well as victims of crime and abuse. I want to respond to this commenter here. Can you make a video of how you got into this? I just graduated with my master's yesterday, and I'm still unsure of what population I'd like to work with. So I don't know how many of my videos you've seen, but so for me, I've known very early on in my life, I'm talking about like 11 or 12, what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a criminal profiler at that age and do work with the courts. So I knew way back then what I wanted to do. And then I got, there's all, I always wanted to add some stuff in here or there, but I've always known first and foremost what I wanted to do. And that I hear that that's not, that's rare for people essentially. And so what I would, when I went through my training, and I have my master's and my doctorate in psychology. When I talked about before in a few videos ago how like I've had a extensive training, and part of being in the doctorate program that I went through, and even my master's. My master's was pretty rigorous too, but my doctorate, you have to work with every population. So you get experience working with children, adolescents, adults, and geriatric populations. You have to do, 5 rotations with that. Even though I had done my master's and I got partial credit in my doctorate for it, I still did some extensive rotations plus my work experience. And so I knew right off the bat, getting out of school, I did not want to work with children. I had already worked with children before in California. And it wasn't because I don't like kids. It's because, with the welfare and institutions codes and all the laws, policies, and welfare and institution codes, there's a lot of policies regulating children. And so, children, specifically, you can't put hands-on restraints on children anymore. At least it was like that when I stopped working with children. And to me, that's very unsafe. I have to be able to defend myself. When you got 300 or 400-pound children, they essentially look like adults, especially if you've got ones with severe and emotional disturbances. They're psychotic. They could be on drugs, any number of things. And they're gonna be a big child in most cases. So they're going to be approaching you as an adult, but there's a lot of policies that, you can't touch kids and stuff like that. Plus, you can't regulate them as much as you can with adults. And I understand why they have those policies in place. However, I felt like it was not for me, just because I felt like working with children, for me, was much more dangerous than working with adults. So I already knew that going in. Geriatric is fine. So I really didn't have any other issues outside of any other population group. But I had done a lot of I had done a lot of mentorships. I had done a lot of training. I had done a lot of job experiences. So I went with what I felt most, what was most aligned with me, and what was also going to get me closest to my goal of being a profiler. And so I felt like, okay, so the forensic population, and also what was going to pay me great, because unfortunately, as many of you may or may not know, when you're in grad school, or when you're fresh out of school, or any school really, like medical school or anything like that, you don't really get paid a lot, which I think is a doggone shame, because people have to eat, especially in California, and it's really hard to make it here for, depending on which city you live in California, it's really hard to make it for anything less than $80K, I think, and be able to pay grown lady bills and stuff like that. So I went with, a combination of what was going to pay me well, what was going to get me closest to my goal and get me the most experience around my goal, what I thought I was going to have a lot of fun at, a job that I was going to have a lot of fun, what I was really passionate about working with. and things of that nature. So I really wanted to stick as close to forensics as possible, to take that next leg in my career. And what was going to um, give me a much more competitive edge than some of my colleagues who went the other route. And it's not to say that any of them are less than, but I know for me as a Black woman, I want to be the highest achiever. I want to be the highest sought after. I want to be undisputable in my career. And I want to get the best training and experience for what I want to do. Now, when I go work with inmates, I'm well aware of how dangerous it can be, and but I also know that the work with inmates has given me my best training. So I love that aspect of my life. Like, it was one of the hardest jobs I've ever had to work as my postdoc internship, but it paid me pretty well. It didn't pay me as well as it should have. And so, but it definitely paid me well, but it gave me the best experience because I thought I had went through stuff before I went into prison, like, in terms of working with a population I didn't really know until I worked in a prison. Not just working with the inmates, but also the legal aspect, the documentation and things like that. I really became really superior when it comes to documentation, but also not just documentation, but interventions. And working with inmates, you're going to get a different type of person each and every time, right? So you're going to get people with different types of crimes. You're going to get all different types of personalities. You're going to be tried in different ways. So it's really the ultimate test. So I knew that that's what I wanted in order to take the next step in my career. So I thought about it long and hard, but I also knew that I had to eat. So those are the things that I took into consideration: paying grown lady bills, what's going to get me closest to my dream job, what's going to give me the best set of clinical and legal skills, so psycholegal skills, and just what's gonna help me progress in the direction that I want to go in, what am I gonna feel good about, and what are my limits too. So I also have limits when I work with people. Like I said, children can push limits, but there's not a whole lot. Or I won't say there's not a whole lot. What I can say is there's many restrictions in terms of handling children that aren't necessarily there with adults, and that for me is what I felt like I needed. I also feel like I didn't want to burn out at my job, or at least I thought I wasn't going to burn out. That was my hope going in. So I really wanted to stay passionate and have a lot of fun and do it. And so that's sort of where I did it. And I also wanted something that allowed me to continue to have the freedom to work in my private practice and just do other things. I also like to have, I like to have a mixture of things that I'm doing. So I don't like to necessarily do one set job all the time, so, even now, like, even though I'm working for myself, I still have different jobs that I'm doing, and so that allows me to be flexible. It allows me not to burn out, and it allows me to still be passionate and thoughtful and creative, and doing all of the things that I love to do. So, it's important to me at this stage of my life to have a whole lot of freedom and really let my career pour back into me. So I don't want to be working, I don't feel like at this stage of my life I should be working in like a, just 9 to 5 all the time and just be working my life away. I really feel like my education and my career should be working for me, because that's how much work I put into it over the years. I've been very passionate about it. Hope that answers your question. Thanks for asking.